Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joshua T Berglan, and I don't know if today's conversations with Joshua T Berglan or civil justice or really what, because I don't even know what category to put this kind of broadcast in, because yeah, it's going to be a conversation, but yeah, I've got questions because there's so much I want to know. And those of you who know my story and know my background know that I was exposed to a lot of really crazy, rough, vile, gross, evil, awful things. And yet at the same time, I grew up in an upper middle class home, and I had all of these privileges, and I went to the country club, and I was going to church on Sunday, and was just living this, on the surface, Aussie inherit, just age myself, leave it to Beaver. Back when, like that whole family, everything's together and everything's perfect and the yards are all manicured, that world. Like that's what I was exposed to, and that's what I lived in, but then had all this crazy stuff happen. And then I started self-inflicting all of the crazy into my life. And that said, when I turned my life around and started sharing my story little by little, because this whole time I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one that had ever been sexually and physically abused. I thought that was the only one that had the sexual identity issues and all of these other, I thought I was the only one. So when I started speaking out, I started meeting a lot of different people that have gone through different levels of trauma, other people that had dissociative identity disorder, other people that had severe PTSD, other people that had spectrum disorders. And it just like I exposed it. And with that, got to see and hear a lot of stories of that kind of connected to my life, but it was different. It was coming from an even darker and even shadowy world, if you will. And I heard story after story, and everything from satanic ritual abuse to trafficking out of the I got to be careful about some of the things I say here because I don't want to get kicked off a platform. Yeah, so I'm going to be careful with the examples of what I say, because I really don't want to get deplatformed again for talking about this stuff, but it matters. The point is this: I saw a lot of really things that were not right in my own life. But then I started meeting other people, and then other people close to me became victims of different things of this world, this shadowy world. And where does this shadow world come from? Is it just individuals? Like, well, if it's individuals, wouldn't they be easy to catch? Like, why do these things happen? Why are these kids disappearing? Why are these people pointing out pastors and saying that they raped them or they were part of some sacrifice? Or like, why do these things happen, and where does it come from? And that is this question that I've had. And the more people I've spoken to, I get down a new wormhole and I start to see, oh my God, this is like, it never ends. And it goes back to the beginning of time. People talk about adrenalized blood. I think I can use that word. People talk about those things. Like, is that true? Is that real? Okay, well, where does that conspiracy lead to? And here's what in this world, here's what's happened. I met a lot of phonies. I met a lot of messed up people that were trying to do right, but were still messed up. I met a lot of people that were pretending to be good, that were actually still hurting people. And then I meet these people that on the surface, you would run from them. You would look at them and you would go, they're bad, because of maybe the way they talk or the things that they talk about. What I learned about that was a very hard lesson, but a good lesson. The people that pretend to be good and act like they're good should be questioned about 10 times more than the people with a foul mouth, nasty attitude, and they're freaking pissed off at the world. And so, and I'm going to be careful about saying all of the names, but there's a certain group that I've become drawn to and have become friends with and gotten close to. And one of them is Zero Dark Tony. Zero Dark Tony is somebody that's rough on the edges, and somebody that if you just talk to him, you'd go, well, how is this a nice guy? Or how is this a good guy? And then come to find out, he's one of the most loving, caring people you will ever meet in your life. And no, Tony's not my guest. But Tony's not the only one that is speaking out and fighting and is coming from a place where they're just sick and tired of seeing this evil take place in the world. And through Tony, I got exposed to our guest today, Dana. And Dana has a story that I believe will help connect the dots for a lot of you who have suffered some pretty cruel and gross injustices. I believe that Dana today is going to be able to help answer the root cause of some of these horrific things that happen in the world, and really help make sense of a world that's very, very confusing. Because frankly, the more I've taken a deep dive into this world, the more I start to realize is there's a lot of different organizations and there's a lot of different people involved, and it's all intertwined in such a way that's meant to keep us very, very confused of what's real and what's true. Boy, I'm sweating now. So today I am honored to get to know and hear a very powerful story, one that I listen to. I watch her broadcast all the time, and all of this information and all of these names that you've heard before, like Scientology or Charles Manson, and you hear these words and you're going, Sharon Tate. Like, you hear those words, you know those words, but there's a story there that most of y'all don't know. And Dana shares this information on her YouTube channel. I think she's on Rumble too. She shares this very, very, very just mind-blowing information with such grace, with a courage, even, because I can't imagine sharing this type of information and exposing this dark shadow world in a way like this with such grace and elegance. It takes a talent to do that. I wish I could do that. Because this subject, I gotta say that we're talking about satanic ritual abuse and other things, I would got to think that this has got to be really hard to talk about and even traumatizing. Like, I can't even hear certain words without making my whole body just go, ugh. But yet I don't know half the life that Dana knows. So this was a very long intro just to say that I don't really know the direction or all of the information that's going to be shared today. I have an idea. I would ask, though, that if you're easily triggered or you've been exposed and dealt with a lot of trauma in your life, if you're not ready to hear and listen, or you're not ready to be triggered today, come back later and watch. You don't need to watch it right now. The last thing I ever want to do is trigger people. I trigger myself a lot sometimes, and I know what that can be like. So protect yourself. But those of you who have been abused, that you have dissociative identity disorder or something like that you've gone through, like, this may be a very impactful, powerful broadcast for you, because even if you didn't experience some of the things that are talked about, it may help you understand your life better. And I know that may sound funny, but one of the books that I read that dramatically changed my life, and who knows how real it is or not, but it's about the Illuminati mind controls, the Illuminati's plan for the undetectable mind control slave. It's one of the most disturbing books I've ever read, but when I read it, as traumatizing as it was, it made my life make a little bit more sense. So I am honored and privileged to have, she's so talented. She's so talented. She could be anything she wants to be in the world, but I think she's a trauma nurse. And in her spare time, she is sharing some very powerful, detailed, true investigative journalist work, discussing some of the most difficult issues you will ever learn about in your life. So it is a great pleasure. And thank you for your patience with this long intro, Dana. It's such a pleasure for me to introduce you today on my broadcast. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and that was a heck of an introduction, so thank you.
I think I'm just talking. It's because I hate it when I try to be careful about what I'm saying, because then I just can't flow, and then I just start second guessing everything I'm going to say, because I don't want to trigger people. And I also don't want to get any of us deplatformed for talking about this. So you know the rules a little bit better than I do. So the way you navigate things, I don't, because I get kicked off of these platforms all the time. So I apologize about all of that, but I mean it when I say I am so honored to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I truly appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. And I think the difficult topics that you're running a risk of being deplatformed, it just shows the importance and the value of speaking about it.
Well, I, it, I I'm going to ask you, I prepared a couple questions just to open the conversation. And I would really love your thoughts, because I wanted you to take this first question and then kind of tie it into, your story and why you're speaking out. But how does ritual abuse uniquely affect the psychology of both children and adult survivors?
So, as far as ritual abuse specifically with children, because generally what I understand of victims that I've spoken to and all of the research that I've done is that it's usually generational trauma that's being inflicted. And so it's seeing what I would say, unfortunately, the rotten fruit sort of bearing out over the child's life. It's dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorder, a proneness to not seek, I don't want to say seek out abusive relationships, but you're vulnerable. You're naturally vulnerable. And that is a environment where your brain, when it was literally developing and you are becoming who you are, your brain is used to being traumatized. You are used to being in a fight or flight mode. I don't think that the development of your frontal lobe until your mid 20s can be understated, because you can't fully grasp, you don't have forethought, you don't understand the past and the ramifications of those things, and you can't think ahead. And so I think with children, kids are gaslit, and I know that that word is so overused, and I hate, but I think that this is an appropriate context to use it. Children are gaslit when it comes to this kind of stuff, whether it's ritual abuse within a family or within a theological structure, whether it's a church, a cult, whatever the case may be. Kids are told that they're liars, and it's easy to do that, right? Because you can just say, well, they're a kid, they don't know what they're talking about. And that's why Dave McGowan's book, Programmed to Kill, people kind of chalk it up to being very conspiratorial. And I would highly disagree, because the government has funded studies for at least 50 years about the effects of this type of trauma, specifically, including on children. And he says it himself. If you're looking to traumatize kids, what's the best way to do it? Satanic ritual abuse, and then run around and say that it's not real. And there's been different phases throughout, human history, whether it's Leo Taxil, faking demons with the Catholic Church hundreds of years ago, or the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s. It's coming back now, which is bothering me quite a bit. And I don't know why they're kind of ramping it up now. You see and hear a lot of people that deny the existence of satanic ritual abuse. I hear mental health professionals questioning the validity of DID or multiple personality disorder, or even disassociation in general, which I find very bizarre. Our brains are created to protect us.
Yeah, it's weird. Even when you're talking about this, like I can feel like this subject is strange even for me still. Like I've done a ton of healing work, and even as you're talking, I can just feel like energies going through my body that are very uncomfortable. And I'm not saying you're making me uncomfortable. It's just, it's real. I had a therapist that didn't think it was real. And it's like the most insulting ever. Then she got to see it was real, because she actually triggered me and I switched. But it's crazy that this is discounted, and how awful. I mean, not understanding like we have an identity crisis. In other words, people don't know their identity, like who they truly are anymore. That is an issue. But when you live a life and you don't know what's real half the time because it's always changing, or what you think is there and it's not really there, you hear something but that's not what was said, or whatever it may be, all of these complications, or when you miss out on weeks at a time because you switched and you went into a different altar, but that altar is not as aware, and then you've gone through life and you've done what you don't even remember. It's been 3 weeks, and then to have a therapist, someone you're supposed to trust as your professional, tell you it's not real. I would imagine that is very, I mean, I know how I felt. I can't imagine what other people go through.
Yeah.
That had it way worse than I did.
Yeah. I think it shows a massive unwillingness on behalf of society as a whole to acknowledge that these things go on. And I think that it is completely unacceptable. People love to tout that, you need to trust the science, right? Well, the science is there because there was a woman in Australia, and she was able to testify against her father and get him thrown away in prison for life. She had over 2,000 personalities, and she was able to testify on the stand. I think that she had switched into 17 of her personalities, and they legally recognized that in court. And that man was thrown away for the rest of his life for what he did to her. But she had been so continuously, methodically, and ritually abused that she had over 2,000 personalities. Like, that's insane to me.
I can't even imagine. I can't even keep up with the ones I have. Okay, so now I want to ask you this, because I had that really long monologue, and then I've asked you this first question. But why do you know so much about this? Like, why is this your area that you speak on? Like, why are you an expert in the subject? Because you're sharing this information as somebody that knows what this life is like. Can you share where your passion for this came?
Sure. So I am not a victim of ritual abuse specifically. I am a victim of familial abuse of that nature, but not anything that is methodical or anything of that sort. And that too is generational, But I had read Program to Kill, and it literally rocked my world. It was mostly that section was in the beginning where he's talking about G.H. Estabrook's and hypnotism, and how this hypnotist was brought in by the CIA and the FBI. And they're like, let's go ahead and see how much we can trick people and create these alternate personalities, and they will have no memory of it. And then they started funding these studies about children. And I said, okay, I need to kind of take a moment and reflect on the things that I've seen in true crime documentaries, because I had started to have this sort of natural independent cognitive dissonance just reading more history books. I said, I feel like this is propaganda and I don't understand why, and I can't really nail it. But then when I read that book, I realized, oh my God, all of these documentaries that come out, like whatever streaming service it is, all of them kind of give the same narrative about the satanic panic, about that topic as a whole. They dismiss it like just completely, like, oh, this was just a hysteria and everybody lost their minds. And it was a bunch of crazy conservatives that went nuts. And as I went through his book, and I did a series on each of the daycare abuse cases and internet rings that were busted. And I went and checked his sources. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. I'm not saying that I was trying to prove him wrong. I just wanted to see for myself the old articles, but it was all there. And I did the series on Instagram, and there was one really horrific internet ring that he talked about called Wonderland. I had someone reach out to me on Instagram that said, who wrote that book? No one's ever talked about my story before. And they sent me videos. They were on Rumble, and they were an activist for family court. because they had been through this and there was something that they had going on with their family. But they had talked about this Wonderland ring that involved executives from Microsoft. Dave McGowan's not here to be told that he was right, but he was right, because that's not the only person that I've had. But that was a huge like moment for me where I was like, people need to hear this. It at least needs to be out here for posterity, because that was so long ago. Why has no one talked about this person's story? And God knows how many other kids at the time that happened to. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Dave McGowan I wanted to honor his work because it really changed things for me. And, then just kind of delving into other topics from there and meeting other interesting people.
So really, you're a journalist at heart?
I don't think so. I don't write anything, so I don't think so. I like the, live research, as I call it.
You do such a good job. I mean, it seems natural. And again, like I got exposed to you from Tony. And I start watching your stuff and I'm going, this is mind blowing. And it's over. I don't know all the names, all the organizations, but it's like you've got this map. Like you get the matrix in your brain and it's all connected beautifully and you just intertwine it. Like it's like you lived in that world. So I was trying to be careful not to assume anything because I didn't know. So I'm glad that I asked the question the way I did, because I thought that you had lived in that life, just because you're so knowledgeable about it. So you're an advocate and you're bringing awareness to all of these things. Well, that puts you at risk. So what's it like for you, being an advocate? Like what kind of challenges do you face bringing to light these subjects?
I think I appreciate it. I don't consider myself, I just feel like I'm bringing people along while I nerd out, but I do appreciate it. I think starting to expose a lot more of the unpopular truths, hidden inner workings, especially within very, I would say, delicate, ripe for grifting, recovery, and ex-cult communities. This is where I have personally had a lot of, I will just say, negative experiences. I won't say anything extreme because, the McClarys, the whistleblowers that I work with, like they've had real black operations run on them, stuff that I can't even talk about because they don't want me to at this time. But learning about, again, just like with the true crime stuff, propaganda, right? And so it's taking the emotion out of it. And are you going to actually see whistleblowers on TV winning awards? No, that's generally not what happens, historically speaking. Whether it's, Gary Caradori and the Franklin scandal, or Gary Webb and Iran-Contra, or Danny Casolaro and, the octopus. These people are taken out or are not allowed to have a place in the sun for a reason. So I try to advise people to choose their heroes wisely.
Are there real heroes? I mean, seriously, are there real heroes?
I think that there are people that they can have admirable qualities, and I think that there are people that do heroic things all the time. However, I don't think it's good to do any sort of worship of anybody, because then it does become the cult of personality. Because, I've gotten here how I've gotten here, but realizing now, because this is really the inner workings of so much of this, and it's kind of fascinating now that I'm thinking about it, and I hadn't really thought about it before, but studying the stuff about ritual abuse and satanic ritual abuse and, what the government was funding back with G.H. Estabrooks, and then working with these whistleblowers now and studying the truth about certain cults and certain religions. And it's just this is where it is now. This is the natural conclusion to group control, behavior modification, all of that. This is sort of like the natural progression of things. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to start small and then we're going to move it out. The cults are doing the slave master's job, is what I like to call them. You know, the powers that be, the puppet master, whatever you want to call them. These cults are doing it on a smaller scale, or, you know, religions, churches. You know, I have my personal theological beliefs. I think it's good to believe in something. I think it's good to have faith. I think it's important. I don't think that people should be nihilist or fatalist. You know, we don't know if we have more than one life. So, you know, you should have hope and faith in something. But these systems that are built to oppress you, and they are, and to control you and abuse you and manipulate your mind and manipulate your spirit and your soul, that's what I want to expose. But they are all connected. It's not like this weird conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy, it's just not a theory.
Yeah, and there you go. So I want to ask you about this because I've never been a part of an official cult, except that some of these organizations that I did join were pretty freaking culty. But then also was also an evangelist and got to speak, you know, at the church, and was involved in that world for a long time. And I saw a lot of things that seemed supernatural and seemed amazing. But what I learned was that it was just as evil as the life I was living before, some of this stuff, but it's shrouded in holiness and godliness. How is that even possible for something to look so good and perfect, but it's evil? Like, how is that even possible?
I tell people that since the dawn of time, literally time immemorial, this is their job, is propaganda. That's been their job since day one. There has always been the master class and the slave class, the controller, the puppet master, and the puppets. And it is their job to give us the illusion of freedom and the illusion of choice. And, well, this is good and this is bad, but really it's you're picking the same thing. When you pull the covers off, it's the exact same thing underneath. It's just presented to you in different formats. And I'm not saying, you know, not everything is bad and everything is good. That's not life. That doesn't account for us being human, you know. And I wouldn't do this if I didn't have hope or faith that, like, inherently deep down there are good people. I think that there are, and I think that it's worth it. And I think that people need to see that other people care, whether it doesn't matter. I'm not getting paid for it. You know what I mean? I'm not on TV. I'm not sponsored. I'm literally just nerding out, but people need to see that there are other people who care, who are willing to put in the time and to speak up. And just like that person reaching out to me about Dave McGowan's book, like, people need to know that there are people out there that care and that they're not alone. I think it's really important, because I feel like, whatever, I call them the slave masters, I feel like they are trying to, you know, isolate us more and more and take away our humanity and the way that we connect to one another. And I hate feeding into that, you know, and that's why I'm really raw and bare, and, you know, I don't hide stuff. And I'm like, well, if I get kicked off of YouTube, so be it. You know, it's fine. I'll find somewhere else to go.
Yeah, self-hosting.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm a big that I self-host. I mean, even though I put stuff on YouTube, I self-host because I'm tired of. I mean, and I guess I could have just done an exclusive broadcast here, but I wanted to use YouTube for this too. And with the, you know, again, I'm trying to be careful, and at the same time going, well, I could self-host and then not worry about this. And I go, oh, I do self-host. I can say whatever I want, but I do want to put this on YouTube, so I can't. What a quagmire to put myself into. Anyway. I guess it's, you know, and here's the thing. It's good to have some rules for ourselves and boundaries for ourselves. And but not the boundaries of other people that other people put on us that tell us that this is what it is. Yes, you can set boundaries with me. I can set boundaries with you. Those are healthy things to do. But when you like this, the way we've been positioned, and it's so hard for me. Like when I was an evangelist, I got to go back to that time. I had the worst time looking at my Muslim brothers and sisters. Like a Muslim woman took me in when I was homeless the first time. I watched her dedication to God, the way she prayed and the way she carried herself, the way that she showed up. I'm like, that's somebody that loves God. But yet they're going to hell because of what? This is so confusing. Like it just doesn't make sense. And then we get put in these situations, and then we get put in a position where you mentioned this good and bad. Like then I swear to you, the knowledge of good and evil is the greatest mind F of all mind Fs, because we put everything in this bag of good and bad. This is good for me. This is not. This is good for me. This is not. And then we do it to other people. Like we work so hard at holding other people to the standard of Jesus that we forget to act like Jesus, like, or whatever the faith is. So it does seem like whoever created this created us to have us at war with each other, which of course there's been literal wars fought over religion and so forth. So I want to ask you, how do you keep your spirit high? Because again, you take these deep dives, you're sharing these stories that are extremely complex, extremely painful, that get into a lot of the just decay of what we have in the world. Like the way, like how do you keep your spirits up? Like how do you keep going and have a good attitude about it?
Well, I don't think I always have the best attitude. I'm human. But I don't know. I guess I just kind of look at it as I'm doing it for posterity, and I know that it matters in the grand scheme of things. I'm not stating that I'm changing the world or anything like that, but there's certain topics that are, very near and dear to my heart. Like, you had mentioned the late Sharon Tate, stuff like that. Like, at least knowing that I've done my part in putting it out there, and it's up and people can see it or they won't, but at least it's out there and I tried to do my best for it, thus far. That that keeps me going. That's what keeps me going, is just knowing that I'm doing something, even if it's very, very small.
As far as people that they're victims of satanic ritual abuse, and have had whether it's their souls split, like whatever, their souls fragmented, they have dissociative identity disorder, they have 2,000 personalities, whatever it may be. The people that have gone through this type of abuse, is there any real hope as far as healing? Is somebody able to completely heal that's gone through SRA?
I don't think that any of us can completely heal back to the way that, we're meant to be, right? Depending on what your belief system is, the way that we are naturally occurring in a perfect sort of utopia. I do think that there are ways to heal, and I think that one of the biggest ways right now is talking about it and not being ashamed and not feeling fear of other people not believing you or mocking you. And please know that there are people who do believe you. Now, I will say this because, I understand that the like monarch recovery community, the SRA recovery community, to an extent, that is another group of victims that are very vulnerable. And so that is also an area heavy with grifting and dangerous people, predators. So that is something else I will say. I will never question a victim about that kind of stuff ever, but just be mindful of what you are taking in, especially if you are in recovery, whatever stage of recovery that is. I think that you'll be recovering for the rest of your life. That's just, I think that you'll go through different phases and waves of where things are better and things maybe aren't so good, but there's always people here, and don't ever let anybody tell you that you're stupid or mock you. It's unacceptable. But I think the more that people talk about it and the more that it is spoken about in a way that is transparent and honest and not all of the sometimes really crazy sort of stuff that we hear. And I'm not calling people crazy, but we need to get the public in general to a baseline understanding of this is real and this has been here since day one, because people can't even grapple with that at all.
Right. Hearing you speak, it just I'm like wanting to just come out of my body, but in a good way, because what you're touching on is it's speaking right to my heart. Because again, I didn't go through satanic ritual abuse. What happened to me was evil, absolutely. What I did to myself was evil. What I did to others was evil. I didn't. But what I want to talk about is like when I made the decision to turn my life around, when I gave my life to the Lord, and I started down this path of rehabilitating my life and trying to be perfect and trying to heal and trying to do everything right. And I would have these times or these series of consecutive months where I wouldn't switch. And I'm like, oh, I'm just lit up and I'm happy and everything's wonderful. And I'm like, I forgot this part, because I just went through deliverance, baptism, like the whole 4-hour deliverance, and just, oh God, I could talk to hours about all the deliverances I went through. But then I'm like, oh, I'm free of these demons now. So I'm healed. This is why I'm happy and joyful. And I'm doing my thing, and I'm doing my thing as an evangelist. And then I switch. And then for a month or 3 months or however long that this happened, because it happened over and over and over again. And guess what? I wasn't the same guy that was up on stage talking about Jesus. I was a very nasty, effed up, angry, scared, confused person. And all the altars were all different, and I could speak about all of them, but I'm not. And this would happen, and other people would see that you're a false prophet, or you're a blah, blah, blah. And I would openly share. I remember, I'll never forget this. This is a church. I won't say the church's name, but I was doing street ministry with them on Friday nights, and I was really struggling. I had switched, and I went in front of the church, and I was there enough to know I need to tell somebody what's going on, because I'm like, this other thing coming is, I don't know if I come back. I don't know when I'll come back. And I've got amazing partner in Jessica and kids. And like, I want to heal completely. I want to be the man I was created to be. I want to be healed all the way. So I'm like scared out of my mind. I'm begging, like, this is what's going on. And I'm telling them what is happening in real time. And to have people look at me like I was a fucking monster because I was sharing in front of the church what I was struggling with, and I needed help. Where was all the people wanting to pray over me then? Like, where were the people laying hands on me? You lay on hands on me when I do something good, but like, or but when I need you, when I need God, when I need the Spirit, like, now you want to turn your back on me? And this kept happening. And it's so confusing for me. But then I know that there's other people that go through this too. So I want to ask you, I don't even know if you have an answer for this, but I know that this kind of thing happens. It doesn't have to be a church. It could just be with people. It could be out in public. It could be your work. It could be your family. It could be a new relationship, whatever it may be. Like, what can we do for people that have these mental uniquenesses when we're out in society and we're talking to people and like we appear and look normal, like, like, hey, everything's good. I got a smiley, my teeth are straight, and I got a suit on, and I'm all pretty. I'm not crazy at all. I'm not fucking crazy. What do people do? Like, how can we? it's not like I want to wear a t-shirt. I have DID, watch out. What can we do to integrate in society in such a way that creates more positive responses, as opposed to that guy needs to be like put in the loony bin and locked away now?
I think that as far as an actual tangible solution, that would be a lifelong conversation and a lifelong goal. I like to remind people who are dismissive of splitting or alters or MPD, DID, or they flat out deny it. I say, how long have they been trying to create like Neuralink and brain chips? And they can't do it because our brains are so incredibly unique that you cannot recreate it. You can't. They've been trying since anyone could try. They've been trying since day one, and they can't, because that is how complex our brains are. And I think that people, and it will take time, because again, there's still propaganda that comes out, and that's the purpose that it serves, is to make people look like lunatics and to make it easy to dismiss them. And it's, obviously much easier if it's never happened to you or it's never affected your life in any sort of way, even on the periphery. But is just talking about it with people more and saying, hey, instead of looking at them like they're crazy, because obviously you kind of understand that maybe they're having a situational struggle or something has gone on, say, look at how awesome their brain is, protecting them that much. Whatever they've overcome, their brain is working overtime, sometimes overtime times 10. But look at how awesome that is. I like to remind people our brains have a built-in mechanism to protect us, and that is awesome, and it is nothing less than that. And that's what, I think that people need to stop watching the propaganda. I get that it's cool and it's fun. It's really not. It has been seeded into the public psyche for decades for a reason, and none of those reasons are good at all, because that kind of crap, the true crime stuff, it's not about victims, even if they say that it is.
No, they're making celebrities out of the crazy people, the serial killers. Like, how is Manson? Manson is more popular than Elvis, I think. I mean, which is really freaking hard to wrap your head around. Yeah, we glamorize this. It almost seems like that's even by design.
Yeah,
like there's got to be a deep-rooted, and I believe in that book, The Undetectable Mind Control Slave. It talks about that, but I forget. Anyway, I love that answer that you just gave, and with everything in me, like, I want to help break these stigmas, but yet I stigmatize myself. But here's the thing I do want to say, because I've made DID sound like a nightmare, and it can be. There's also a gift in it. Like, it's not all bad. And I know that you talked about how amazing it is that our creator gave us this brain that can heal itself and it wants to protect us. And I mean, that is amazing. Our whole bodies are amazing, really. I mean, the fact that we're alive is amazing. But I lost my train of thought when I went off on that tangent. The DID, fudge, man. I hate when that happens. I am that's I'm not going to edit this out. I haven't had one of these brain farts in a long time, and this is really humbling for me. It doesn't matter. I was talking about DID. What was I saying?
You were saying about my answer about how it's not all bad.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes, there's some unique built-in advantages to having DID. One of them is that you get to see things to multiple angles. The other one is sometimes when that happens, you get to looking at the other angle of it, and then you just fall off and you forget what you were talking about, like what just happened just now, because I was seeing things through all angles. But it can be a gift, and one of those gifts, I believe, is that, or it's not just a gift in how you get to see things in a unique way of looking at the world, but the thing that I've known in my own life that I was terrified of was that I didn't want to be alone. And a lot of people that go through this, they feel very alone and isolated. And I got good news for you, people. You are worthy of love. You are absolutely worthy of love, and you can find love. And I know some people that is like beyond where they're at, but I think as human beings, we do crave that connection. And when you felt crazy, you felt isolated, you don't feel safe around anyone, people don't feel safe around you, it makes people want to go run and hide in their closet. I mean, at least I know that from my own perspective. Like, I'm just afraid to come out of my house sometimes. But at the same time, I crave love, and I've craved love my whole life. Just did a really bad job of like trying to love and be somebody worthy of love. But you can find love, and you can have a healthy relationship. That was the point of all of that, is that you can have healthy relationships. You can be high functioning. You can make your dreams come true, even though all this has happened to you. And I know that may sound impossible, it may sound insane, but it's true. And the reason I talk about it, and this is why I'm so passionate and get so excited about people like you, because you advocate for us. You know, you help us feel safe to come out and talk about what has happened to us. And again, my story does not fit into SRA, but I do have DID, and I have my own story called The Devil Inside Me, because it was a demon. But guess what? I'm living the life of my dreams, and I'm just as crazy as all of you, and that's a good thing. And I don't even know why I felt led to say that, but I do know that there's that isolating feeling, and I just want people to know that you can. I know what Google says about DID. I know what it says about it. It's not all true. You know, you may have to have a protective bubble around you a little bit. You may have to navigate life differently, but you can do those things. A lot of people have to navigate life differently to fit whatever their uniqueness is. But you are worthy of love. You are worthy of friendships. You can make your dreams come true. You can work a job. It's probably centered around your gifts, talents, and intellectual property, but you can use all of that to make your dreams come true too. So your life is not over. And the reason I'm saying this is because I know a lot of people that have gone through SRA, that have DID, PTSD, and other mental health conditions. They don't feel that they have hope. They cut themselves off for the world. They don't want to talk to people. I want to encourage you all to share your story, to talk about it, because yeah, guess what? You get to have the life that you were created to live. You do. So I want to ask you, from your perspective, what is one of the more inspiring overcoming stories that you've heard? This is not your perspective, but what's one of the more inspiring recovery stories that you've heard of somebody that's gone through SRA or that was a part of these cults? What's a encouraging story that you can share of somebody that's overcome all of that to go on to live the life that they were created to live?
Oh, that's a tough question, because with SRA victims, it's what their goals are. It's so unique. And so sometimes just being here and waking up is a celebration, right? And that's a beautiful thing. And I would say with cults specifically, that I wouldn't say that they are living the life of their dreams at all, but they are a huge inspiration to me, and they have impacted my life deeply. Is the McClarys, who left Scientology, who whistle blew on Scientology. They've never been on TV. You will never hear about them on TV. They are kind of the dirty secret of the ex-Scientology community, but they are a wealth of knowledge, and they are a very kind elderly couple. And they have literally been through hell, and they are still kind, and they are soft, and they are caring, but they're smart. And they have taught me to trust my instincts and to be brave and not cower down. And that is just such a gift that I hope that someday I am able to pass on to other people, because it's something that they've given me.
Do you think that more would share their story if they felt safe?
I think so. I think if they were taken seriously, I think more people would. Um, I think whether it's situations like SRA or situations with real whistleblowers, you got to choose. Do you want to be popular, or do you want to speak the truth? You generally can't have both. You're kind of limiting things if you want both all the time. I try to tell people fame and popularity is an accident, and it's temporary, because the world is always changing, the culture is always changing, not in extremes necessarily, but over time. And if you are being fully truthful, you're probably not going to be that popular, because you're probably going to make some people angry. Because, like you said before, and I thought it was a great point, as humans, we naturally crave connection, we naturally crave community. And so, a sort of herd like mentality is natural, because we want to go where they're going, wherever the crowd is going. Sometimes it's not easy to step away from the crowd and be, on your own or in a smaller group. But I think that it's important.
Do you like, I know trauma bonding is a thing, and like I've noticed too, in my intro I was talking about when I first started sharing my story, I had a lot of people come out of the woodwork and start talking, and I got exposed to a lot of different stories. And holy shoot, trauma bonding is like a really powerful thing. It's like heroin. I mean, my God. Now I know why when I would be vulnerable when I was dating early on, like I didn't know it was called trauma bonding then, but I remember that effect and all of the bad relationships I got into because of that. But then coming out of it from a place of, okay, well, now I'm trying to be a good man. I'm trying to do things the right way, and not be a piece of crap, and not be evil, and not go back into my addictions and all of that stuff. But I would notice how strong the trauma bonding was, even without the person even saying I was molested or I went through that. It just, you can feel it. Can you describe that energy of trauma bonding that happens with victims?
I feel like trauma bonding is something that happens not only between, whether, let's just say, two people. Like you said, maybe they don't even know that the other person has been abused or what they've gone through, right? I think that sometimes we naturally are drawn to certain people and we don't know why, and we don't find out until later, or they're drawn to us. And I hate to say it again, but I gotta drive the point home. Propaganda, certain topics throughout history, those are meant to collectively traumatize us. They are meant to collectively traumatize the public. They are meant to traumatize our psyche and to also desensitize us. And I think that that's for a reason. But that energy of trauma bonding, because, and with interpersonal relationships, I've had major trauma bonding. And some people call it Stockholm syndrome, like whatever, it doesn't matter. There's 30 descriptions for it, but it's just a constant feeling of unsafe. You're never safe. You're never safe. And the only thing that is safe is the pain. And that's not healthy. I also don't think it's healthy to deny the existence of the pain or the things that you've gone through. I don't believe that anybody should have to suffer in silence. I think that that's wrong. And I think that people should speak out. But if that's the only thing that is bringing two individuals together, you guys might be hindering your own healing, and you guys might be creating a new traumatic experience that you're not going to recognize until much later in life.
So I want to segue into this part then, because it's hard. It was always hard for me to want to speak to somebody that hadn't been through what I'd been through, because they were never going to understand me. This is what I told myself. And this could be a complete lie. to myself. But they'll never get it. They'll never understand. They haven't walked in my shoes. They don't have a clue. But then go to the other side where I meet somebody that has been through what I've been through. I'm like, oh, they're going to get me. This is who I want to talk to. And then that's where the trauma bonding happens, and that's where mistakes happen. So, and you think about communities, survivor communities, that is it safe for survivors or people that have gone through SRA and other types of abuse? Is it safe for them to form groups, support groups, if you will? Is that safe?
That's such, I have a, I guess you could say unpopular, but it's coming from a place of love and compassion and concern, is there are always going to be predators waiting in the wings because they know that these people are vulnerable. And just like how cults, that's a form of, group control and behavior modification, taking a bunch of victims and kind of clustering them in different ways and predators infiltrating that. There's always a risk, but that's life. Life has risks. So are you gonna, keep it inside and stay inside? I don't, that's such a hard thing to answer. But it's, nothing is black and white. So you can't say that definitively yes or no. There's always going to be the gray area because you just can't factor in with numbers or data or whatever. It doesn't matter. You cannot factor in the human part. The human part is what makes it gray because we're all unique. So I think that there's a risk, and I think that people just need to be mindful of where they're getting their information. That's all, just to protect yourself.
How can people that have gone through these experiences like SRA, that do form groups, how can they protect themselves from trauma bonding? And how can they protect themselves from people that are pretending to be victims?
Ooh, that pretending part, I just dealt with a situation like this, like probably a week and a half ago. There's nothing that you can do. There's nothing that I can do as trying to act as a middleman, so to speak, where I am aware of a certain individual that is very dangerous, and I think that the community that they are involved in, that they should not be around these other victims who are very vulnerable. But I just don't think in the day and age of this technology and the way that we're communicating on these different platforms, there's not a way to keep everyone safe. And that's why I think it's so important to talk about these things, to take away the stigma, to take away the shame. People understand that the science is there, that there was a woman in Australia with over 2,000 personalities who got to testify against her father and throw him away, and he is going to rot and die in prison, that the science is there, that the MRIs show when someone is splitting. This has been proven. It's there and it's real. And so when people talk about it and it becomes more normalized, then I think we will be able to recognize the wolf in sheep's clothing. We'll be able to recognize people that can't really nail it, but your instincts are telling you that something's wrong. You know what I mean? And then I think the communities, whether big or small, I think then they can take on the task of trying to appropriately address the very legitimate concern of these victims trauma bonding in clusters. But it's getting to that point, you know what I mean? And I just feel like we're not there yet. Like I wait for the day when true crime is done. Like I want those documentaries about all the satanic panic stuff. Like I wish that those would just go away. I'm not trying to censor anybody, but I feel like it re-traumatizes the people that went through that, and it is so disrespectful, and it is just serving the purpose of very evil people.
What do you how long can you keep doing this? Like, are there other avenues that you're going to go down? Because you got to think, after I mean, I don't know how long you've been exposing this and telling these stories, but is there another area that interests you, that you're drawn to, that you want to bring your light to, or is this the wheelhouse that you want to keep digging into?
Well, I think that this stuff with the cults in particular and kind of trying to correct history, so to speak, I think that this is going to keep me busy for a very long time because I keep turning on lights in places where there's been cockroaches hiding for decades and decades. But I do think that I'm doing it for the right reason, and it is important to me because those victims matter too. Those victims matter too. Like, I don't care that Sharon Tate was a celebrity. I don't give a damn. I don't care that it's a true crime sort of popular thing. I care about what happened and how it has been used, and people have profited off of the pain of what happened to them and their loved ones ever since. And the way that that has been weaponized to traumatize us as a nation and to traumatize the world, quite frankly. So I think that I'll be here for a long time because I have a sneaking suspicion that there are a lot of these types of things that need to be corrected.
Are the religions, the mainstream religions that we know about, are they tied into the cults that you expose?
All of them are connected. I mean, everything is connected at the end of the day. It's unfortunate, but it makes sense, and it kind of grounds this more in reality of good, bad. But when you pull off, when you pull off the lid, and again, not everybody's good, not everybody's bad, but this goes everywhere. This goes to the Vatican, Mormons, the LDS. I'm sure that as I move my way south, eventually we're going to be seeing more of the evangelical sort of tent circuit, Southern Baptist. It is what it is, but it needs to be shown that this is a functioning, a well-oiled machine that has been functioning for a long time. And while they may appear different, the building may appear different, the clergy may appear different, whatever the case may be, it's all the same underneath.
Is when people talk about the Catholic Church, in your eyes, is the Catholic Church different than Christianity, or are they tied together?
I feel like I don't know too much as far as Catholicism, as far as the theology of it, so to speak. I know that some people have a lot of battles about that, and I'm just like, I think that there are other hills that we can die on, and we should unite over things that are more important, that would unite us as a whole. But I don't know that I would say that they're different. I mean, I feel like people have used and abused faith and God and, Jesus Christ and whatever else your belief system may be. It has been weaponized for war, for war games, essentially, because at the end of the day, this type of abuse, systematic abuse and war, that's feeding the war machine. It's constantly traumatizing, it's constantly oppressing, and it's feeding the war machine because, I mean, just think about society if we didn't have war, and think about if we had one generation or one decade where children weren't abused. There was no ritual abuse. Think about that. Think if there was no, I don't want to trade inappropriately and illegally trading underage through government sanctioned facilities where the courts get involved, because that happens. That still happens to this day, and that ties into SRA and RA as well to this very day. There's a case going on with the LDS right now. Think about how different the world would be if we could just have one 10-year period where kids could just grow up and that wasn't a thing. How different would the world be? Their frontal lobes would literally be different. Our world would literally be different.
And the ripple effect, because the abused kid who doesn't get help goes on, and odds are he hurt somebody.
Yep.
And hurt somebody and hurt somebody. But when they hurt that person's now hurt. So then they hurt people, and then that affects them. And then there's children, and then there's families, and it spreads out everywhere. It's not an isolated incident. You hurt someone, you break them down mentally, you cause PTSD, you cause DID, you cause that victim now goes on and just so I'm have this picture and map in my head of one person and that ripple effect, and then you remove that ripple effect and you talk about one person, then you say no children, it dies. Like the whole cycle of abuse, of mental illness, of addiction, of divorce, of getting in relationships when you shouldn't be in one. Then there's less lying, there's less gaslighting, there's less trying to cover up for the bad stuff you did. It kind of sounds peaceful. It is what a simple idea. Let's not hurt kids, and in the process we can heal the world. How do we make that happen? I know that's not an easy answer, but how can we truly stop this cycle of abuse that's happening in the world today?
I think on a realistic level, not being too fantastical, people need to understand what goes on in family court. They need to understand how that has been weaponized deeply. I did a series about, and I haven't finished it, I'll come back to it someday, about Tavistock, because, I've shown that. I've read those books on my channel where they're talking about psychiatry shaped by war, and how welfare is a weapon and they are going to use it, and the creation of child psychiatry, and the social welfare system. These systems were put in place before we were even a thought in our parents' minds, and they've succeeded thus far. But people need to understand that these things are very real, and again, everything's not black and white, but the dependency to want to have the government come and fix your life, that has to be a big thing that stops, because that is how they weaponize these things against people. And that is how people lose the rights to their children, and their children get taken away, and how, certain religious cults, whatever you want to call them, they have special laws where they get special treatment. You know what I'm saying? This quid pro quo, all of that. This is such a beast, but we have to stop turning to them. We just have to. Now, I understand, obviously, in life or death situations, yes, you need to keep yourself safe, and you need to protect the vulnerable people around you. That's different, but that's not always what it's used for. And if we're all being really honest, we know that that's the truth, that it is abused, and that it is a nanny state, essentially. And I don't believe in politics. I don't play politics or identity politics. It's not real. I just think that people need to educate themselves about, survivors and advocates that are going through trauma in family court right now, who it's some of the most horrific stuff. People have lost their kids, and their kids are being moved from place to place, and their hands are tied and they can't do anything about it, because who are they supposed to call? It's the government that's literally doing that to them. And I think once people kind of come to terms with that, then I think we can all come to a solution. It's going to take everybody putting their heads together,
Yeah. Wow. It's so much. There's just, and the agency name that you're speaking of, there's a woman named Rachel I interviewed about 2 years ago. That agency took her kid away, and the story, how it all happened, is worse than the movie Taken is I guess there's 4 of them. That's a nightmare scenario. Very similar kind of situation, but it was with the hospital and nurses, and oh my God. And so all the facts, she ended up winning her child back. But when she broke down that story, and it's almost impossible. It's very, very challenging to be able to get your child back. But wow, it literally, when I was listening to her story, I'm like, well, I'm never going to get divorced again. like I'm like I'm not going to do all of these things because of this is potentially, this could happen, and this is not some, well, that's 1 in a million shot. It's like that could have happened to anyone.
It's very normal.
It's so sad. It's so sad. The oh, I know what I was going to ask you. The you already said you have your faith, and you it's your own thing, and that's kind of where I'm at now. Like, I was all about, before, everything about what I did was, evangelizing people, and like now I'm not as bold about that. If somebody comes and talks to me, I'll share with them and that kind of thing. But when we look at our religions and like, well, that's a trap, that's meant to screw me up. But in those religions, they talk about our creator. They talk about God and all the different names for God. Like, where does somebody that's seeking, because if they can't go to religion, but religion is where you kind of learn the framework of God, or a concept of God, or what God can be or is, and again, everyone's got a lot of different opinions about that too, about who God is. But how does somebody that is hurting and doesn't have hope and is lost, that's when they're most vulnerable. So
Yeah.
what can they do? Where do they go if they're not safe long term in the church or the mosque or whatever their religious temple is? If they're not safe there long term, because if that's just going back into another type of system, another type of programming, where do they go?
Man, that is a loaded question. And I feel like it's not their burden to bear, nor their responsibility. It's ours. It's just us as people, as humans. It's our responsibility to create that space. I feel like people, and this is how I approach things, because some people like to say that, like, especially the ex-Scientology community, they like to say that I'm like a Christian extremist, right? Because of my faith. And I'm like, no, that's not true. In my belief system, I think that it is a supernatural occurrence. That is nothing that I can do at all. That has nothing to do with me. I cannot wave a wand, smack you around. I can't change you. That is something supernatural that only can happen outside of my hands. All I can do is pray for you, and that's not hurting anybody, right? I think that people should try to break away from the herd mentality and the tribalism, and be willing to talk about their faith, their belief system, without it becoming this like all out, fighting match, and then figure out a way where within these communities where people are naturally, whether they're hopeless and they're not saying it, or we know that they're at a stage where maybe they want to have some sort of a test run with a church or some type of belief system or theology. Like, we need to get more comfortable with talking about these things. It shouldn't be so uncomfortable. Like, oh, that's not polite discussion. Well, life isn't polite.
True.
Life isn't polite. Life is life. But in order to get there, we need to be able to talk about it that way. Okay, we have a very specific community or a meeting where here's some information. What are you naturally drawn to? And this is a safe space for you guys to come together and just ask questions. That's all. But we have to do that for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for the record, people listening, I'm not bashing religions at all. I'm not. I without the framework of religion and the Pentecostal church that I pretty much got my training in, and I grew up in a Baptist church, but when I was really learning the Bible and going through that, that's where I got it. And learning obedience, and like that was it. not only was, it is extremely powerful, but the way I recognize it is being obedient to the spirit inside of me, not, which better be a good spirit, because I've had some scary ones in the past I don't think I want to listen to, but the Holy Spirit. And without that, I even today, and I still love the Bible, even though I look at things and I'm going, I think a man put that there, but okay. But that's, again, like they I think even says in the Bible that you need the Holy Spirit to help you discern. Well, yeah. So there you go. Because guess what? And when people I used to get really worked up about all the different books of the Bible and why they took them out. I'm like, you can just enjoy them, because you know what? The Holy Spirit can make a James Patterson novel, Anointed Works. I mean, that's just the way it works. You can speak through anything. And that's kind of how I operate in now. But the one thing I don't miss is the judgment. And of course I still get judged, but not in the same way. Or if I don't understand something, or if I interpret a Bible verse one way, but you interpret it different, and then now I'm getting a tongue lashing because I don't understand it the way that you do, or whatever it may be. Like, I don't miss that stuff. And none of that brings peace. None of that says, oh, I'm loved and I can heal and I'm safe here. That seems, you're going to beat me up if I don't memorize this Bible verse, or if I don't pray in tongues now, you're going to, I don't miss any of that. And so your answer was amazing. Such a great answer, because I couldn't have come up with that if I sat around for 10 hours to try to come up with one. It was great. And it's very thoughtful. I'm one of those people that believe, or I hope, one of my daily prayers is that we all treated each other like God was inside of us. Like, because if I knew God was inside of you, I wouldn't call you a bad name, because I'd be looking at you like, well, God's in there and God's going to hear. Oh, I better be respectful. And we don't know the whole story about people's lives. We don't know, like, when somebody's in a bad mood and we personalize it, like we're the one that did so. Why are you mad at me? Like, it has nothing to do with you, you dope. But we're just flawed humans. And I wish that, like, my hope is that we started to recognize that, so then we don't have to put the hat on of, I have ASD, I have DID, or the t-shirt, or whatever it may be. And like, we just have compassion and love and respect and sincerely care about other people. Like, that would be awesome. I would love that, because frankly, I think we're all kind of mentally ill after the last few years. You think we'd be nicer to each other. So I got a question. So you're a trauma nurse, correct?
Critical care.
Critical care. What's the difference between the two?
So trauma is more like the emergency department, and I'm in the ICU.
Well, I bet that's adventurous.
It can be.
How do you have the energy? Because you guys work 12-hour shifts, right?
Yeah.
Whew. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to be exhausted. I need a nap after this broadcast. So you work those hours. Like, how, when you're seeing the things that you get to see on a daily basis, I asked you before about how you keep your spirits up with discussing the things that you do, but when you're seeing death and you're seeing just some wild stuff at your work every day, like, do you just feel like you're getting beat up from all angles? Because again, you're here smiling, you have a good attitude, at least what I normally see. Like, how do you keep yourself going? Like, what do you do? This is the question. What is it that you actually do to bring a smile to your face, other than sacrificing your soul for the betterment of other people? Like, what do you do to bring yourself joy?
Well, I don't really do much to bring myself joy, but I'm a simple creature. I look like a complicated creature because I used to be hell on wheels. I am no longer hell on wheels. I'm a very simple creature now in my middle to old age. But Honestly, at work, yes, it can be traumatic, especially like you said, the past couple years, but you have no idea. A little geriatric patient, and maybe they have dementia and they're literally going to forget what they said before I leave the room. But them going through what they're going through, and like they say thank you, or they just hold my hand, they look at me, like it just does it for me. I get to be with people. I have the privilege of being with people through some of the hardest times of their lives, and sometimes, as they leave this earth. And it is not easy, but it is an honor and it is a gift. And I think that it has made me a compassionate person. But yes, I mean, it can be taxing, but it is a gift. And I try to see it that way because, that's traumatic for them. So to be able to create a safe space for them where they feel okay to grieve or celebrate, however they look at it, that's really important to me.
You have a very, very powerful spirit of gratitude, because it's not great. It's not just gratitude in the sense of the sun is out and, I got a tan today or whatever it may be, or I got a good hair day. Like it's not the superficial gratitude. You're actually talking about gratitude and traumatic mess, like just some very hard, painful stuff. And here you are being grateful for it, like the opportunity that you have, and you're getting to be there for them. And you see it. That where did this attitude of just pure gratitude, like the gratitude that you have, that you show, is my favorite kind of gratitude. So where does that come from?
A lot of heartache and a lot of pain, a lot of the world and people that I care about very much being cruel, and losing people that I love. Life, life things, right? Just things that we all kind of go through in different phases. But I am a very emotional person. I wear my heart on my sleeve, but I won't let the world make me cold. That's what they want. They want us detached and cold. And I think being traumatized by certain things in my life, and then watching my patients and their family members and their loved ones be strong, be weak, grieve, smile, laugh, all of it. It just gives me something that I could never repay them for.
You're amazing. You're still one of the greatest mysteries I've ever experienced in my life. And that's not a bad thing at all. I watch your broadcast, I watch your poise, and I'm really good at recognizing talent and gifts in people who are just great. And you're one of those people, I believe, that could do so many different things with their talent and with their gifts. And I think I've even told you in live chats when you're broadcasting,
You
like,
have.
you need an agent. You could be, and I mean, because like I just keep seeing all of these things that you can do, that you're gifted for, and you're doing this work. You're putting a spotlight on a shadow world that most people don't even know exist. I know you don't care about fame, but you are sacrificing fame for other people. You're sacrificing popularity for truth. God bless you. God bless you for the work that you do, for the sacrifices you make, the risk that you set yourself up for, every broadcast you do. Like, you are a hero to me. I'm honored that you came on this broadcast. I'm sorry that it was so awful in the beginning. I wanted to give you this amazing introduction and then it just whatever. But I think you are terrific. And I hope everyone, I'm going to give you a chance to plug everything, but anything that you choose that you want to do in life, you will accomplish. Anything you can imagine, you will accomplish. And if I can ever be of support to you, please let me know, because I think you have a unique talent. You're extremely gifted, but your heart for the people you have a heart for, to me, makes you aces in my book. So I'm just indebted to you for being here today. Please take the time. I know there's an organization that you're very passionate about. I'll put that in the show notes, but please tell everybody where they can follow your journey, hear the stories that you're sharing, and also any last words that you want to speak. Please speak them. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and the intro was not terrible, so don't say that. The website that I would like to promote is End Ritual Abuse. This is an organization. There are some random podcast interviews out there with the doctor that runs it, but this woman has had Lucian Gray, I believe is his name, I could be wrong, and one of the other heads of, I think, the Church of Satan. They have tried to take her down because she talks about ritual abuse. She talks about splitting of the mind and how this is systematic and methodical, and these are the victims that she works with, and she's a really incredible human being. And they have tried to take her down, and they have tried to censor her. They have tried to use the American Psychological Association to take her down. It's completely unacceptable. So I would love to get traffic to her website. And I am Rotting Jewels on YouTube and also on Instagram. And I am Dana Duda on Twitter.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. And again, we can do anything to support you. Let us know.
Thank you so much.